Welcome back to the Mission43 casting of a pod. We are here today talking to Isaac Belden. He is the leader and founder of the Veterans Entrepreneur Alliance, one of Mission43's greatest education partners, and talking about what it takes to actually get things off the ground and the resilience and determination it takes to keep it going no matter what. Here we go. Welcome to the Mission43 Podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the struggles and triumphs of transitioning to life after the military. I'm Dan Nelson. I'm a former Army Special Forces officer who's personally experienced the challenges of transitioning to civilian life. In every episode, we'll be sharing tips, strategies, and real-life stories of veterans and their families who've chosen Idaho for their life after the military. So join us, and let's start the conversation. Isaac Belden from Veterans Entrepreneur Alliance. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
No, so it's actually one of the few partners that we have in the education pillar of Mission43, and you have really taken on a huge role over this past year, our first year of doing official business together, Mission43 and VEA, and helping us out quite a bit with the entrepreneurship track, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I know you've advised like hundreds of people for Mission43 this year, but why, if someone's listening, like and curious, like why is Idaho the right place for a veteran that wants to start their own business?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. So Idaho just in general is a very veteran-friendly state. People typically want to support things that make veterans happy, that make veterans transition easier.
They still tax our retirement, though.
Absolutely, they do that. So the people of Idaho, I should say. It's a really low barrier to entry to veterans to come here and to start businesses and things, or to stay here and start businesses is, I think, even more important. So I just think Idaho in general, it's just it's a very conducive place for everything that a veteran needs to be successful.
Well, in a lot of different ways, right? And part of that, and not to toot Mission43's own horn, but it's the only statewide like veterans initiative that includes both mill and mill spouses.
Yes.
To do all these things, and you are leading a big part of that with Allison Garrow and Amanda Knight in Mission43's education stuff. But I'm curious, like, how did you get to be not just an entrepreneur, but an advisor of entrepreneurs, a successful one at that?
Well, one thing I want to pull out of there real fast before I answer that question is the mill spouse part. I think that's where a lot of people are missing when they're trying to support the veteran community.
Yeah.
The military spouse oftentimes, I believe, has the harder job than we do because they have to put up with all of our crap, right? They've got to put up with the constant questions and the kind of insecurities and the like kind of unpredictability of what we do.
Well, not my crap, but in general.
Exactly.
Someone might have to put up with the veterans crap. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Gotcha.
So I think that including them is very, very important. It's something that I very quickly realized that I needed to do in the VEA. And from what I know, you guys have done it from the start. So I think it's really important.
How did you get to be in this position, though? Like, I'm curious, as someone that is afraid of anything related to entrepreneurship, me personally, I don't have the courage to start my own thing and be all in.
Yeah, so I actually call myself an accidental entrepreneur.
Oh.
So I landed a job working for a company, and it was great. I started there actually setting appointments for them. It was a job that I took off of Craigslist. I was actually recently off of a shoulder surgery at the VA.
I had a different job from Craigslist myself, but either way.
And I was actually overly medicated at the time and received a phone call, and they offered me this job, and I took it, and I showed up, and I was like, man, this place seems pretty sketchy, but I'm gonna roll with it. So I started setting appointments for them. I was really, really good at that. They pretty quickly moved me into a sales manager role. And then that company expanded over the time that I was there dramatically. By the time I left, I was running a team of 10 inside sales guys and around 100 outside sales guys.
Oh, wow.
And it came to a point where I was kind of just going through the motion. I wasn't really happy. I was making good money, but it wasn't really feeding me in more important ways. And I wanted to do more for the community. And so I kept bringing it up to the owners. Hey, like, why don't we do this? Like, why don't we go and attend this event? Or why don't we do like a give back program? Why don't we do these things? And they weren't interested. They were just interested in making money. And so at some point I realized this isn't a place for me. If I want to actually like give back and do some good, I need to go out and do it on my own. I need to do it for myself. And so turned into kind of the seed of the idea that led me to starting my first business.
Well, so you're talking about leading a group in short order, going from a person that schedules appointments to leading 100 plus people. So you're kind of like in a company command position. So are you one of the chosen ones? Were you a military officer in the past, or were you dirty enlisted swine?
I was dirty enlisted swine.
Nice. Very cool. What'd you do?
So I was a combat engineer. I was actually Idaho Guard my entire career. I was with Charlie Company from 2001 to 2013.
Okay. And are you from Idaho originally?
So no, I'm actually from Portland.
Oh.
So I grew up in Portland. I actually tell this joke pretty often. A lot of people assume the first time I was ever shot at was in Iraq, and it wasn't. I was 13 walking to the grocery store.
That does not surprise me at all. Portland.
So, but I moved here in high school because I was getting in way too much trouble, and there was a couple of tracks I could go down in Portland, and neither one of them were good. So
yeah.
I got transplanted to Idaho to live with my grandparents, and I've never looked back.
Very cool. So you chose to do the combat engineer thing and went to Iraq when?
So I went to Iraq in 2004.
Oh, wow.
So
right after the invasion.
Right after the invasion, yeah. So we were in a little fob called Fob McHenry, right outside of a village called Al-Hawija. So we went 2004 until we got back right after Christmas 2005.
What was the experience like for you?
I call it my best and worst experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously in the train up, you think you know what it's going to be like, and not to get like too gruesome about it, but we're sitting in Kuwait, we're waiting to go. Everybody's just like ready, right? We got held up for a while because there was a lot of activity going on. They didn't want us crossing the border, so they held us back. We finally get in the vehicles and we're driving down the road, and everybody thinks that they know what's going on until that first V-bid hit us. Mm-hmm. And you're looking out the windows and there's pieces of people like just on the side of the road, and you're like, holy shit, this is real. And so for me, it was, you're never really ready for something like that, I don't believe.
How old were you then?
21? I think I was 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So barely a man.
Yeah, barely. Yeah. I don't even.
Yeah.
Probably not even close. But
I'm working on it at 41 right now myself.
Too.
So
yeah. So
you had that experience, and then you stayed in the Guard after that for a while longer. But is that also the time that you're talking about taking this leap into this Craigslist job and leadership in the civilian world and all those things? Or
so I was at the tail end of my military career at that point. I was dealing with some stuff and not dealing with it well. Drinking and just being a complete worst version of myself that I could be. And there came a point where I realized that kind of the military lifestyle and the people that I hung out with because of that at the time were actually just kind of pulling me down, and I wasn't making any positive moves in my life. And at that time too, there was a big reorganization in the state, and there were a lot of kind of political things happening in the units where people were getting passed for promotions that were in spots. So I just decided, like, you know what, if I'm going to change my life, if I'm going to do anything better for myself, I think it's time that I say goodbye to this chapter and start a new one, try to write the next one.
Back to where you were at, where you had these ideas of what the company you're working for could do. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they weren't interested in changing, which is not uncommon, right?
Yeah.
Is that what spurred you to say, all right, screw it, I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So
that was literally it?
Yeah, that was it. Like I wanted to do more. Anybody can go out and get a job and make money, right? But for me, I believe that it shouldn't always just be about kind of a profit-making machine. There should be some portion where you're feeding back into the community that you live in to make it a better place for everyone.
Very Bernie Sanders of you.
Yeah.
No, man, I think that's pretty dang cool, honestly. Like, so how did that come to fruition then for you, where you left a job that was paying the bills and decided to branch out? Like, how terrifying was that for you? Were you married at the time, or?
I was married. Yes, I was married at the time. Yep.
And she accepted that.
She did. So it's actually a little more traumatic than you probably even imagine. So
I can imagine.
I was actually still working there, and I was kind of starting to lay the groundwork for my eventual exit. And I confided in the wrong fellow employee who then went to ownership of the company. And they're like, he's thinking about going out on his own. And so my boss walked in and he put a 5-year non-compete agreement on my desk and just said, hey, we realized you don't have a non-compete on file. We're going to need you to sign this. And I was just like, okay, I'll take a look at it. And the fact that it was 2.5 times longer than any non-compete agreement I'd ever seen in this company told me that there was probably something to it. So I called my wife and I just said, hey, babe, pretty sure they know that I'm considering leaving. They've told me that I need to sign this non-compete agreement. And she's like, well, you want to do it? And I was like, I do want to do it. And she's like, all right, let's go. So
you didn't sign it, I'm guessing?
I did not sign it. I went in, I told him, hey, I'm not going to sign this, and I'm guessing you know why. And he's like, yes, I do. And we had a conversation. We parted ways, and I started my company the next day.
What was the first company you started?
12B Capital. We were a credit card processing company.
As in like 12 Bravo?
12 Bravo,
the Combat Engineer, MOS. Yep. Okay.
That was me.
And what did you do there? Because for someone like me, I have no idea. And that was actually the first time I met you, is you were in 12 Bravo Capital. And I was like, I assume they probably help people with investments or something.
So we didn't. We actually helped people with funding solutions. So we helped people with alternative funding in the beginning. But the core of our business really was credit card processing. So setting small businesses up with the ability to accept credit cards.
Oh.
Yeah. So you walk into a gas station or a clothing store or whatever, the machines that they're running your cards through, we set people up with that service.
No kidding. Yeah. So you were like the 12 Bravo tap to pay here or Venmo or something like that.
Yep. That was us.
And then how long did that last, or is it still a thing?
So it's actually still around. I don't do as much with it anymore. There's residual that comes out of that business, which is great. Kind of helps me support what I do now, since it doesn't pay a lot. But that was actually what led me to want to start the nonprofit. One of the first things I did when I started that company was I put my money where my mouth was as far as wanting to help the community. And I started giving back 10% of my gross revenue from that business to nonprofits.
Why?
Because I wanted to fuel the community. And I'm not talking like the Red Cross or the American Heart Association. Like, I'm not talking about these big ones that don't really, like, they don't need my little donations, right? I'm talking like in the community, grassroots, people like making it happen here in Idaho. I wanted to just help give them kind of that mailbox money that they don't get from grants, that they don't get from like big sponsorships for events and things. I just wanted that free cash that they can take and do whatever they need for the organization, because I think that's what really moves the needle for some of them.
Yeah, for sure it does. But I'm curious, like, how as a business owner do you justify that? Is that a business move to say, like, I am deliberately going to be strategic with my philanthropic giving to hopefully encourage others to do the same, hopefully use me for their business, like, or is that something that's just out of the kindness of your heart that does impact your earning potential?
So I'd like to say that it was a business move. It ended up being a good business move, and it's something that I encourage people to do now through what I do. But in the beginning, it was literally just wanting to do good. I just wanted to help people kind of realize their goals and their dreams.
Where does that drive come from? Where you're talking about like really doubling down and what you have done since with VEA, like where does your drive to see others succeed?
So I grew up in a pretty rough situation. Like we grew up extreme. Like when I say poor, like I don't know that most people that I talk to about it like really understand. It's like waiting for that box to come from welfare with the powdered milk in it, like poor, like not knowing where our next meal is coming from, poor, and never really had a lot of support from my parents. They were pretty terrible just in general. And I got this idea, I got this kind of feeling, right? When you're a kid and like every door seems closed to you, nobody was coming. And I think that that's like a common thing people say, like, nobody's coming, do it for yourself. Like, sometimes people should be coming. Like, you should be trying to find these people that really need it, and you should be trying to give back to them, because I think that we all do a hell of a lot better when the entire community can be performing at least just a very operational level, like, right? Like if your basic needs are met, then I think it's better for you. It's better for me. I don't think any community having kind of this section, and there's some people you can't help, but I don't think any community should have just these people that are just completely forgotten and that don't have the same opportunities. I've been very fortunate. I've worked very hard to do to get where I've gotten, and I want other people to have the same opportunity.
And specifically, you're talking about veterans and military spouses.
Absolutely.
Now, right? Like,
yeah.
And obviously you did have, your deployment experience, your military experience. What was it then that gave you the confidence to say, not only am I going to start my own business, but I'm going to also start a nonprofit venture to support these folks that I don't want to see get left on the wayside?
So first, I tell people all the time, I'm either too stupid or stubborn to quit. So I know that about myself. So I knew that if I did it, I was going to make it happen no matter how long it took, no matter how hard it was. I knew I could make it happen. Now, as far as doing what I do specifically, it was actually the time with the nonprofits that I was donating to. Mm-hmm. I got to take a really close look at other organizations and kind of what they were doing. And I met a ton of nonprofits that were doing good. I met some, unfortunately, that were doing bad. And then I met some that were well-intentioned, but were not moving the needle. And all of it continued to just kind of echo in my brain that no matter how good your intentions are, if you're not trying to be innovative, if you're not trying to like kind of work outside of the box, you're not ever really going to help the people that you're trying to serve. There are a lot of, especially in the veteran space, there are a lot of organizations that all they do is they talk and then they hand out some stickers and they hand out some brochures and then they're like, the finish line's over there.
I'm very aware of that.
Like, I hope you make it, right? And for me, it's like, I don't need a handout. And this is super cliche and overused, but I need a hand up. Like, I need you to equip me to continue down the path that I want to go on. So, I really pride the VEA in being an organization that doesn't just hand you some stuff, point you in the direction you need to go and hope that you get there, like a little tap on the butt, right? Like, I want to lock arms and I want to go there with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what makes the VEA special, and other organizations that we choose to partner with or that choose to partner with us. I want them to have kind of that same like meaning behind it, or that same dedication. And that's why Mission43 is a great partner for us, because you guys see that and you live that.
Well, how did you get the expertise then? Because you worked for a company and then you started your own company, and that was paying dividends, right?
Yeah.
But how did you have the confidence to say, you know what, come to me if you want entrepreneurial advice, even in some company or field or industry that you had no experience in?
So, and this is going to sound really backwards, but it's because I made so many stupid mistakes that I learned from. I know all of the things to tell people not to do. I know some of the things that they should do, and then I amassed a network through that business of people that are experts, right? I never claim to be a business expert. I'm not a guru. I'm pretty serviceable at a lot of things, but not really excellent at any of them probably. But I'm a great connector. I'm never afraid to ask someone. If I don't know the answer to something, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. I tell every single person I talk to, I say, even if you don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that I'm going to know the answer, ask me and I'll find the answer for you. And I think that's where my confidence comes from there, is I know that I will find you the resource you need. I will find you the expertise, the education that you need to accomplish whatever goal you bring to me.
Where is the tipping point, honestly, for an entrepreneur nonprofit like yours? Like, how many businesses, how many people do you need to be connected to? Does VEA need to be connected to actually provide value?
Honestly, I think one. Like, if I can help even just one veteran find kind of that next purpose, like start to write that next chapter, and they find success, that's enough for me. But obviously for the powers that be that fund organizations like ours, I don't really know the answer to that. Right now we're going to pass the threshold of 600 members this year, largely in part to the partnership with you guys. But
600 members means 600 businesses?
600 either businesses or veterans spouses that would like to start businesses that are exploring it.
That's still quite a bit.
It's a ton. We started this year at 200, so.
Wow.
Crazy.
How many people do you have working at VEA then? Like how many people are the ones that are actually, meat in the middle where it hits the meat?
So up until this year, it has always been just me and volunteers or resource partners where we can find them or when they're available. But this year
just you? You're the only person advising these folks?
That was up until this year, yes. Yeah. Now we've brought on 2 part-time marketing folks. I brought on an engagement director, and then we actually have a skill bridger now,
awesome.
Which is really great. So I've got a team of 4 people with me now that are making things a hell of a lot easier.
It's still pretty small for 200
Absolutely it is.
Or 600 some businesses.
Yeah, so we definitely grew at a rate we didn't expect.
Yeah.
I thought maybe we'd bring on another, because the 200 that we started this year with, that was an accumulation over a few years.
Right.
Obviously, we had some setbacks that kind of stunted our growth a little bit early on, but I didn't expect to 3x our membership. So the team that we've built, we're already outgrowing. So
how did you get there then? Like, how did you get to a point where you amassed 200? Like, how are you sustaining your family and also this business venture?
So I'm very fortunate to have made some big wins in the company that I had previously. We definitely lean into my service connection with the VA, right? And then we're actually on one grant that specifically is intended to fund an executive director for the organization, which is great. So that pays me a salary to run the VEA, which is amazing. I couldn't have jumped into it otherwise as fully as I have couldn't have got my wife's sign off to do it.
Yeah. Because she likes food.
She likes to, not sleep outside
which is so weird.
And eat.
Selfish, right? But I don't.
Yeah. She's weird like that. But as far as sustaining it operationally, and this is kind of crazy because it's kind of new, but I've leaned really heavily into AI to streamline a lot of my tasks, and that has actually helped me a lot. Like I was definitely reaching kind of a critical mass.
Yeah.
And then some of the things that I've been able to implement have really, really helped us. But I say 9 to 5, but it's really like an 8 to 6 job Monday through Friday and sometimes on Saturdays. Just trying to keep up with it right now, but it feeds my soul. And so.
Well, that's what's weird. That's kind of why I'm too scared to ever do anything entrepreneurial, I think, in part because I see these entrepreneurs, and even like where we're sitting right now, like this whole company, this whole production group in 1890 was built by a veteran who went all in, and I don't think he paid himself for like the first 8 years of their existence. Yeah. Like at all.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, like how does that affect your relationships? Like how does an entrepreneur maneuver that type of dedication and also have a family?
Drawing like really hard lines in the sand. One thing that I had to do is I had to, and there were some pretty big offenders early on. I had to draw a line in the sand. I said, after a certain time at night, you don't call me.
Yeah.
I will not be answering the phone, right? So drawing really clear boundaries with the people that you're serving, like in most of my members' cases, it's their customers. They can't be available to them all the time. In my case, it's my members. I can't be. I want to be because I end up becoming friends with most of them.
Yeah.
So they feel like they can call me all night long and on the weekends.
I do send you pictures sometimes late at night, and
yep.
I apologize now.
Absolutely, yeah. I enjoy them immensely.
Good.
Yeah. But as far as navigating it just operationally like that, like keeping time for your family, because your family, and actually one of the guys here mentioned it earlier, James McCarter actually brings this up in most of his talks. Like if you don't have the buy-in from your family, you're not going anywhere. You're either going to be divorced or your business is going to fail because you're going to get pulled in that direction too often. So making sure that you have a really solid understanding and arrangement with your family and knowing like, hey, this is the time I spend on my business. This is the time I spend on my family. I think that that's incredibly, incredibly important.
Did you have that perspective when you started your first business or the VEA, or did that develop over
It's developed over time. Yeah, it's. I think early on, most of us mess that up because you're so, and I still mess it up sometimes. There's still times where it's just like I say, hey, I'm gonna run up and do this email real quick, and then my wife will jokingly say, see you in an hour, right? So I think it's a constant thing that you need to keep an eye on and be mindful of, because you can slip back into it because you get so, whether it be dedication, because for me at this point it's really just like dedication and it makes me feel good. I love doing it. But for the startup entrepreneur, you're literally like, I need to make money, right? But you can throw yourself completely into the business and maybe make money, or strike a balance and still maybe make money, but definitely keep your family. And if you don't have your family, everything else, I don't know that it really matters.
How has the experience been for you and your family throughout this whole thing, whether it was coming out of the military or leaving the Guard and then, going full-time into this civilian employment, which brought you objective success, to venturing out, which brought you more objective success, to then shifting, I guess, or pivoting to a nonprofit model where you're trying to help people do the same?
So my wife actually, I met my wife a week after I got out of the military.
Oh, okay.
So I actually jokingly say that I went from getting bossed around by them to getting bossed around by her. I needed a continuation of that because I can't function without it. But as far as the business goes, it's definitely been a challenge. The business especially, because I went from this incredible earning potential to nothing the next day. So trying to just put my head down and make that happen. Obviously she's pretty understanding in the beginning, because it's like, okay, we need to replace that income, but it's a grind, right? And no matter how much that you need to do this in order to put food on the table, it all wears you down over time. So it's definitely been, I'm very blessed to have a wife that is really supportive, that is willing to communicate her needs when she has them. When I'm not like living up to my end, she's definitely willing to tell me like, hey man, like this ain't working. Yeah. So implementing those safeguards, I think, has really been vital to me. And then with the nonprofit, as I was transitioning from the business, which was then paying the bills, to the nonprofit, I was actually doing both at the same time. This was supposed to, VEA, or at the time, the Veteran Entrepreneur Summit is what it was called. It was supposed to be a balance. It was supposed to be like making money most of the day, doing my passion project a little bit of the day, and then it turned into like the wife like poking her head in the office like, hey, you gonna do the thing that makes money today, or are you gonna do the thing that makes you feel good today? Oh, the feel good thing? Okay, cool.
Great.
Yeah, awesome. So that was definitely a hard balance to strike, because when you have something that you're so passionate about, and you see like what you're doing reflected in the eyes of the people that you're serving, it's intoxicating, right? It's addictive. And I just want more and more and more of it, because I know that I'm moving the needle for these people that otherwise would just be kind of wandering lost, trying to figure out what the next thing is. So being able to find them and like at least point them in the right direction. I'm not doing it for them, right? I'm just like, I'm the guardrails, and there's nothing professionally anyways that's more rewarding than that.
What's been like the biggest challenge or the hardest part of being a nonprofit leader or a business leader, or both in your case?
For me, jumping in head first without really knowing what I was getting myself into, because I'm the master of that. When I started my business, I didn't know how to run a business. Yeah. When I started the nonprofit, I definitely had no idea how to run a nonprofit.
How did you learn?
Trial and error, really, and just leaning into. I had some folks that jumped in to kind of coach me. Actually, Perkins Coie came in really early. They're the ones that volunteered to come on pro bono and set up all of our documents, which was great.
That's a huge deal.
Huge deal. Yeah, because I can't remember exactly what the number was, but I looked it up one time, and they bill out like $900 an hour or something, and I was just like, couldn't do that. So the guidance that they gave me, and then some initial board members that I had that had a lot of experience in the nonprofit space that really kind of set me up for success. And I mean, I definitely messed things up here and there, and learned from them and fixed them, and now we're kind of chugging along.
How did you build your board, like for a nonprofit? Like, how did you start that initially and get people to buy in with their time and effort and thoughts? It's actually something that served me really well in the military. I was always just a pretty likable dude, even when I was saying things that sounded like not likable things, right? I was very good at just connecting with people. That's the opposite of me. I say non-likable things, and I'm also non-likable, so I don't really understand the analogy, but okay.
So early on, really, it was a lot of people that I had met through my business, and they had kind of seen my heart. Like, I'm not afraid. Like, I will overshare. I'm a chronic oversharer. So most of the people that I brought in, they had met me and they knew me, like kind of like to my core, like what I was all about. And so when I did this, and when I talked about it, what I would hear back all the time is just like, this is like, I can tell you're really passionate. Actually, so Butch at Cryptech.
Yeah.
When I brought him in as our first keynote speaker, there's this whole story. Like, I got there, he was kind of late to the meeting. I was sitting in the boardroom. There were no lights on, so that was a little weird. And I was just like, maybe he's not coming. And he walks in and he sits down and he's just like kind of leaned back in the chair, looking generally uninterested, and I pour my heart out, and then he leans forward and I'm like, he's definitely telling me no. And then he said something to the effect of like, I don't usually get involved in things like kind of this early, but I can tell you're really passionate about this, right? And I think that that's kind of the theme of most of the conversations that I had, that where people agreed to just kind of jump on board and give me a shot.
So to some degree, you were certainly just doubling down and betting on yourself and your ability to make these human connections that produce results in a different business and or nonprofit arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and it's been a very difficult thing for me to kind of come to terms with, but it's something that actually Albert Kang at CapEd was one of my early supporters, like super, super great guy. And he told me pretty frankly one time, I don't really give a shit about the VEA, and nobody really does at this point. This was early on. They care about you and what you're trying to accomplish with it. So right now you're the VEA. So the story that you're telling about why you want to do it, that's what's important right now. Eventually people are going to care about the VEA, but for now it's an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
Just keep telling your story, keep telling why you want to do this, what you think you can accomplish by doing this, and that's what's going to get people interested. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, I never wanted to be the guy. I never wanted to be like a figurehead for an organization. If I could run the VEA as a completely faceless organization that just did good stuff and nobody knew who did it, I would do it.
It's kind of hard to do if you're the only employee for the majority of your existence.
Yeah, for sure.
And you like it. Part of your business model or nonprofit business model is, advising people. Like you're the one that's actually talking to everyone when they're doing this, right?
I make every single phone call to every single person that comes in, and I either give them the information they need or connect them to the resource they need. You
kind of mentioned it in your military experience, but have you always been like a people person to the nth degree?
Yeah, my whole life. Like I think back to like the third grade. My third grade teacher made me the idea guy in class because I was always out there, like always wanted to help. I wanted to like provide some sort of feedback, something which at that time would probably be considered ADHD, but
yes,
now it's helpful.
Oh, well, that's good. Times change. Yeah. I was the riot maker in third grade. I don't know what that means, but it hasn't really served me well. I think it's pretty unique. Like, how hard is it for an entrepreneur, someone whose livelihood or their family's livelihood depends on it? How hard is it to actually continue a business when life happens? Like, divorces happen, moves happen, family tragedies happen. Like, how does one keep the momentum of a business going when their personal life is falling apart, or do they?
So I can speak to this from a very personal place. My daughter, she went through a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, kind of in the year, what would that have been, year 2 of VEA? year 3 of VEA. And I guess you need to be there for your family, right? You need to do everything you can for your family.
It's not a normal family situation.
No, definitely not. It's balance, of course. When it's a business owner that is relying on that to pay the bills, obviously that is much more difficult. So I guess it's really finding the time, which is more difficult in those times, and drawing those boundaries and understanding that even though your family needs you, there still has to be a segment of your day, of your life, that feeds into the business, because if that fails, then all of that becomes much more difficult, right? So, and that's a lot easier said than done. With the VEA, I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to really rely. I wasn't getting paid to do it. So I was able to step away and just be there in the hospital every day with my kid.
So you did kind of pause VEA.
I did, yeah. I still took phone calls, and like if people needed help and they reached out to me, I was always there to provide resources, provide the support that they needed. But yeah, I took a big step back because in those moments, nothing else seems like it matters, right? Yeah. It doesn't get much worse than your kid kind of knocking on that door. So it's grit, man. I hate the whole like rise and grind mentality and all this other stuff, but it's being willing to put in the extra hours when your kid's sleeping, or when whatever that situation, like you have a moment that you can kind of take away, like block out the rest of the world and focus on the business, or in my situation, the nonprofit.
Was that helpful for you in some way?
It was honestly, obviously my daughter and some of the wins during that time were really great. My wife is an incredible support. A lot of friends and family come in to our aid during the time just to be there for us. Those are all good things and very helpful things, but VEA in a lot of ways was kind of my medicine during that time too. Like being able to continue to see some wins in the members that we had, or hear like a thank you for making this connection happen or making that happen, was definitely, they were big lifts during a really, really terrible time.
How old was your daughter when she got sick?
So unfortunately, this was her second time with cancer. She was diagnosed when she was 3. She was 10 this time. And we weren't watching it very closely, because past the age of 8, the type of cancer she had, it's like 0.5% chance that it'll come back. She was 10 when she was diagnosed, and by that point it had spread. It had obliterated one of her kidneys. It filled up half of her liver with tumors. Oh my God. Her inferior vena cava was filled with tumor. So it was bad news bears. It was pretty progressed.
Did you ever think about quitting?
No, never. No.
Not once during this whole ungodly, challenging period did you think, you know what, VEA is good? No,
so for me, I knew, I guess we've just got such a strong family unit. I knew we were going to get through it.
Jeez.
There were times that were obviously really hard, and there were times where I was like, today I'm not doing any of this, right? But I don't believe, not a moment that I can remember where I ever said, you know what, I'm just not going to do this anymore, because partially for selfish reasons. It's like, I need this. This is my escape from reality. This is my escape from all of the ugly. And this is just good. This just feels good. There's nothing that drags me down about this. So no, I don't think at all during that time I ever considered quitting or wanted to quit.
Did you ever expect VEA to be at where you're at right now?
No. Honestly, I never even, if it hadn't been for the grant that it was specifically intended to pay a salary, like I didn't have any plans to be paid to do what I do. I was going to keep running my business.
Is it a federal grant, state grant?
It's a federal grant. Okay. Yeah. I didn't I didn't know how I would ever be paid. I eventually wanted to step into VEA full time, and I knew that at that point, as much as a lot of people say like, oh, it's a nonprofit, nobody gets paid, it's not true. It's still a business. And if you're spending all of your time on it, unless you're independently wealthy, you're probably going to get paid, right? Yeah. And if you're going to bring people in to support your mission, if you want them to stick around, they also probably need to be paid. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, other paying opportunities are going to come around and they're going to be like, sayonara. Yeah. Like, so I would say it wasn't in my 10-year plan. It wasn't even on my horizon at the time. And I definitely, it was a hit, right? It doesn't pay as much as the business paid. But what I lack in salary, I make up for in feeling really damn good about what I do every day. I wake up and obviously we all have days where I'm just like, I'm not feeling it today. But most days I wake up and I'm excited to be able to do what I do. Yeah. Like it's an incredible privilege.
Where do you see VEA going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I want to expand. I mean, technically we cover the entire state, but we don't cover the entire state to the level that I want to. So I would say being really kind of dug in all over the state, because the Treasure Valley, there are a lot of resources here, but Bonners Ferry, where I grew up, where I went to high school and everything, that is not the case up there, right? Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, the resources are fairly sparse up there. Eastern Idaho, sparse. Treasure Valley, we're really, really good at taking care of people here, and we're really, really good at not leaving our AO just in general. I call it the land of forgotten toys up there and over there. So 5 to 10 years, I want to be really, really, really dug in all over the state. Previously, I'd had kind of aspirations to take the VEA myself and like go other places. I've since kind of...
Like out-of-state places?
Out-of-state places, because I think that what we do is pretty unique. Obviously, I'm biased.
Yeah.
And I think that it needs to be done other places. But now I'm more of I want to get the recipe right here, and then I want to kind of hand the recipe off to other well-intentioned people that want to take the structure of what we've done. And
you talked about it a lot before. There's a lot of veterans organizations, nonprofit or otherwise, that say they're in the business of helping veterans become entrepreneurs, successful ones at that. But I don't see a lot of follow through necessarily on a lot of those. So what makes VEA different?
So really it is the follow through. So when we talk with a business, or when I talk with a business, it's not okay, here are the resources you asked for. We run them through, we actually recently developed a new onboarding process where they go through a really in-depth form that we've created that kind of tells us exactly where they are and helps us come up with a really sustainable long-term plan for support. But initially, when I have that first phone call, I'll ask them for their first 3 to 5 things they want to accomplish. Like, what are the things that you want to get done in the next, let's call it 6 months? And then I actually hold them accountable to those things. We set up checkpoints along the way, and if we're 3 months in and you've accomplished one thing, like, hey, we're halfway in and you are not even close to halfway there. Like, what do we need to do? Like, are those no longer priorities, or have you just not got around to doing them? Or have you tried to do them and you failed? And how can we help you kind of
So you're like an intrusive advisor.
Absolutely.
And accountability buddy. Accountability
buddy. So I think it's a pretty common misconception. A lot of people say, well, the military, right? I mean, they are really good at like following through. And it's like, so let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
So in the military, somebody tells you what you're going to be wearing that day, what you're going to be eating that day, where you need to be, when you need to be there, when you're waking up, when you're going to bed. Like, what part of that makes you think that they're just magically going to start managing their schedule in a sustainable way just because they're now out of the military? And then everybody like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? So it's like, so we still need that that upper leadership, right? Like kind of smacking you down every once in a while, being like, dude, you said you wanted to do these things. You haven't done these things. Why haven't you done these things? I obviously do it in a much nicer way than I would have previously, but I still do it, right? Because the VEA is not worth a damn if all I'm doing is just spewing a bunch of information to you and then leaving you to your own devices. If I'm not checking in, if I'm not trying to kind of pull you back into the mix when I see that you haven't been accomplishing anything, then what is the point? Like, why am I doing it? To get paid? Am I doing it just for a paycheck? Because if you're doing it just for a paycheck, go and get a job.
Yeah.
Like, don't
make more money.
Yeah, make more money and move the needle for yourself, and like stop pretending to be the answer to all of these veterans that are investing their time and their faith and their trust in you.
Dan, that's a huge one for me, where if so many of the veteran nonprofits would just be honest with themselves of what they can provide, and then beyond that, be honest with the veterans' military spouses that could be relying upon them in a time of whatever need that is. That's a very vulnerable time, right?
Absolutely. And there's a sea of veteran organizations out there, right? So most of these men and women, they get lost. They're just like, I'm going to pick this one because this one looks good, right? And then they put all of their trust and their faith in you. And then you're 6 months down the road and realize you just wasted all that time because you got nothing out of it. So I never... and obviously, I've made mistakes. I've missed appointments. I've given bad information. That happens. But as long as you're consistently just showing up for that person, I think that's what it's all about. You're
developing and nurturing a personal relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and that's, some people say, well, they're clients or they're members, right? Like, you can't get too... I get attached as hell to every single one because I think it's important, because if you don't know them, if you don't like really know them on a personal level, then you can't really help them. Yeah. Like, I have conversations all the time with my members that have absolutely nothing to do with them starting a business, because sometimes I just need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And if we can be that, then I think that's a win too.
Well, Isaac, I truly appreciate what you're doing. For people that are either listening or watching, how do they get a hold of you in the VEA if they're like, man, this is something that I really am interested in learning more about?
Yeah, so you can find us at vealliance.org. That is our main website, and from there you can get to any of the services or resources we provide. You can also reach us directly at 208-314-1776.
Hey, nice.
Good number.
Nice.
And then on all the social media channels, typically you can find us at VE Alliance.
And then pretty much any entrepreneur-related Mission 43 event,
absolutely,
you'll be there.
Yeah. So Entrepreneur Forward, we're planning some really big stuff for next year too.
Oh yeah.
We got a Boise Entrepreneur Week every year with the military track is a huge time for us, both of us now. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing everything that you've done. And honestly, it's just humbling to be sitting at a table with somebody that's gone through all the things that you've gone through in your entire life, and that still prioritizes continued service, both of the community and people that you care about. So thank you.
I appreciate you guys and you personally. Like, you started all of this. We ran into each other at an event, and you asked me specifically. You said, "Why haven't we done anything together?" And we had a conversation, and the gear started moving, so I'll always be grateful to you for that.
Well, your choice of character is obviously questionable, but other than that, you do a hell of a job, Isaac. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for joining us for the Mission 43 podcast. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you have any questions or feedback, please comment below or email podcast@mission43.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Be proud of your service, not defined by it. See you next time.